All right, in After Effects 2022, we're going to look at making masks and using masks. And masks we've seen before in Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, quite frankly, as well, where you use clipping masks and layer masks. And all a mask really does, it shows something and it hides something. So we're going to play around with that a little bit today and see how After Effects deals with masks and if we can animate them at all. So I'm just going to start with the basic new project, new composition. I'm just going to call it masks, which I should definitely label all my comps. 1920, 1080, 24 frames per second, 30 seconds, totally fine. So here I go. Now the masks do work in different ways, so let's play around and see what we can do here. So I'm just going to click a shape layer here, that's all. I'm just going to click and drag a shape, a circle, onto my board here, onto my comp, and I'm just going to move it around, whatever I want to do there. Now once again, I could change up my fill, my stroke. I'm just going to go to my stroke, so you know what, I don't need a stroke. Click on the name, click off the stroke, done. If I want to change the fill, I could change the fill. Now here, it's something interesting. Hold down Command, double click on the anchor point tool and it gets in the middle. That's what we want. Great. Here's something interesting where I can add a mask to this, or I could add more shapes to this one layer. So right here I have this shape layer. Now this is only for the shape layer. If I have the shape layer selected, what I could do, I can click back on my shape layer tool and I can start making more shapes. If I want, I could have multiple shapes, multiple, let's say, contents inside of this layer. Right now there's one ellipse. It shows me right here in the layer panel. So if I want, I can make another circle. And notice that the cursor has a star next to it. That is the indication that I'm about to make a shape. Great. Now up here, when I clicked on this, I also have this option right here next to my fill and stroke. I have this option here. I have the star, tool creates a shape, or I have this mask looking one. Tool creates a mask. It's a square with a circle in it, which indicates mask, which is a similar icon we've seen in Photoshop as well. So tool creates a mask. Okay, so let me click on that one now. Now the cursor is no longer a star. It has this square with a circle in it, which means mask. So let's see what this does. I'm just going to click and drag. Oh, okay, so it's showing something and hiding something. So what I noticed before, 1, 2, 3, it has 1, 2, 3 ellipses in there, great. But now a new drop down is shown here. I could twirl down masks, mask 1. So I could also have multiple masks. I can click and drag another one if I want right here, which I don't really want to do that, but I can add another mask, mask 2, and I could kind of mess around with that. So there are ways to just add more shapes or add a mask. Now with the mask, can I manipulate the mask? Of course. Let's take a look at just the mask. I just hover over the path of the mask, and now I can manipulate just the mask. Okay, I can play around with that. Now let's see all the attributes we have for a mask. Right here I have a mask path. I could animate it. Mask feather, I could animate. Mask opacity, animate. Let's play around. Mask path. Not much I could do here in terms of just changing the shape, but I'm going to show you that in a little second. Mask feather. Let's scrub that. Let's see what that does. Okay, it starts to feather the edge of the mask. Great, that actually creates something pretty cool. I'm just going to undo that. There's no reset for that, but that's okay. Mask opacity, there we go. So I could, whatever's inside the mask, or whatever the mask contains, I could lower the opacity of that. And once again, I could animate that. Mask expansion, so let's see what that does. So I can expand the mask out, or expand the mask in. And once again, that is animatable. So let's try that. I'm going to do the mask feather first just to play around. There I go, my first keyframe. Click on the stopwatch. I have my keyframe there first. I'm going to move it over just a little bit, and I'm going to do a mask feather, and let's just bring it out here a little bit. Oh, for some reason my mask expansion changed too. So I'm just going to do that. There's my animation done. Okay, so it goes from there to there. Pretty interesting. I could probably make something a little more interesting there. I'm going to kill that. Bring it back to the beginning. Mask opacity. Let's play around once again. Let's bring that mask feather back down to 0. Mask opacity. Click it here. It's at 100%. Click it down here. All right, there's my mask. Now the mask is doing the work. Okay. Now, of course, I could still play with the opacity normally, which I could do right here, but I could also just play strictly with the mask opacity. All right, now mask expansion. Let's play around with mask expansion. Okay, now let's see what that does. So once again, click on my stopwatch, my keyframe's there, move over my CTI a little bit, and let's bring it inside. All right, that's kind of interesting. Okay, same idea, animate that. Very cool. Something pretty simple there. Now there is another option here I didn't look at right away. I can play around with the mask itself and how it actually plays around with the content inside. I could invert it. So now it's the opposite. What it's showing now is the opposite. It's not showing this anymore. It's showing this part. I could click off the invert. I could also click on my subtract, which does the same as invert. So by default, they're always on add. You could always subtract. There's a few others you can work with, but mainly add and subtract are the ones you might want to work with. But I'm just going to click back on add. That might actually come in handy in some situations, so I'm just going to kill this one as well. Now the mask path is very interesting because I can animate it. Well, how do I animate it? It's actually very interesting because I find it a little finicky, only because clicking on the mask can be a little trouble sometimes, but generally it's pretty good. So actually let's animate the mask path. So I'm going to click on there. There's my mask path. Great. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to click on the path. Great. I want to move the path. Well, a few different ways I can move the path. I could hold down Shift and use arrow keys, but look, I only had a few of the points selected. Notice that these points are selected, but these ones aren't. And also another option, if I press Command T or Control T on a PC, I could just actually have a bounding box around these particular points, the ones that are selected. That's kind of interesting. Never really seen that before in Illustrator. Press Enter to release it. Now if I hold down Shift, I could select all of them, Command T, and I can move it around. And there's just my mask moving. And notice I can just animate the mask motion. I always thought I was not able to move the mask, it's stuck with the content, but no, here you could actually move the mask and animate it. So let's do this. So there's my mask. I'm going to move it over a little bit, and I'm going to change it here, bring it over here, let's say. And now I can kind of do the little disappearing act that we've seen before. Pretty interesting. Now another thing I can do here, instead of just doing that, I can not only bring it over, let's change the mask itself for some odd reason. Just like that. And there we go. So the mask is actually going to morph and change, but actually still move the way it does. That's how we can animate the mask. It is a little tricky. I still prefer mats, track mats, but this is actually a very interesting way to do it as well. Now that's how it works with shape layers. Let's shut that off for a second. Okay, now what I can do is I'm going to play around with some type. So here's some type. So I'm just going to click hello as I normally do. I'm going to bring that down. Command click the anchor point tool, get that anchor point in the middle, and just scale it, hold down Shift, scale. Perfect, done. Now I could add a mask to this. Let's play around and see what that does. Now a few different ways to add masks. Obviously I could click on the shape layer, and as soon as I hover over, well, right now it's on my shape tool, because guess what? I'm not actually selected on the layer. If I want to add a mask to this layer, I need to click on the layer, and now look, my cursor's turned to a mask. I click off, my cursor for the shape tool is a star, meaning I'm about to make a shape. I click on the layer, and now it's converted to a cursor of making a mask. Cool. Another way I can make a mask, the pen tool. The pen tool can be used as a mask as well. There I am. Once again, I've my cursor has the mask on it. If I click off, my cursor just has a shape. I'm going to make a new shape. Another way to make a mask, layer, new, and I can make a mask. Where is it here? There it is, this mask right there. But let me select that, sorry. Layer, mask, new mask. And it automatically adds a mask to my type, and it makes it the exact size of my type. That's my mask. So once again, if I want to play around with just the mask, I click on mask path, click on my selection tool, and I could just move that. Once again, I could animate that. Let's do a quick animation. I'm going to keep that there. Click on my tool. Oh, click on the stopwatch, sorry. Bring my keyframe back over here. It doesn't really matter. Move it over here. And now I'm going to move my path back. And I'm just going to move it up. Hold on Shift. Keep it in place. It was perfect, so I do have to be careful here. Let me expand it a little bit. Doesn't really matter there. I think that much is going to change, and that's it. There's my kind of animation in that regard. Now obviously it did get a little crooked there, of course I can fix that, it's not a problem, but that's one way to play with our mask as well with type. But let me actually delete that mask because I want to show you something else here. So with my layer selected, again, I'm going to click on my pen tool this time. Now the pen tool is interesting because I can actually now click and make my own path. Let's do something silly here. It doesn't really matter. Now, as you notice, nothing's really happening. The mask isn't really hiding or showing something. It's just a path. And I have to actually complete a whole shape in order for the mask to work. There, now it's a mask. All right, so once again, if I just select the mask, There it is. If I move it, I can move all these individual pieces. There it is. Once again, if I double click on the line, I could actually select the whole path of the whole mask. And then I could actually now move that around, and there's my mask there. So 3 different ways to add a mask: shape tool, pen tool, or layer, new mask, and it just automatically adds a mask there for you. So, and quite a different ways to play around with our the mask itself. Pretty simple, but there are a lot of things we can do. I'm just going to add a little feather here. I'm going to add a little opacity maybe. A lot of different things we can do with our mask here. Oh, wrong way, there we go. So that's just some of the things. Now, let me shut that off too. Okay, the next thing I want to show is actually, I'm going to bring in a couple pictures. I'm going to play around with masks on this picture, do a little wipe, almost like a little transition. So I'm going to bring a couple pictures of trees in. Okay, there's my trees. I should organize these properly, but I'm just doing this for the tutorial. Let me bring both in at the same time. Oh, I went back a little too far. There we go. Bring them back in. Beautiful. Bring them both on. There we are. And we're just going to shrink them both down. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to do it that way. I'm going to do it this way, because I can do both at the same time. Click on scale, scale 1 down. Yes. So having selected both, and I copied or clicked on scale, the other scale, both of them. Now I could just click on one and they both scale together. It's a little trick if you don't know that one yet. Move that around there. Doesn't really matter. I'm just kind of playing around here. Okay, cool. So I have that tree, and I have that picture of trees there too. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to show you this. So on the first one, I'm going to add a mask. And what I'm going to do with that mask, I'm going to hide it. I'm going to first maybe blow it up really big or really small, and then the picture behind is going to show through, almost like a little bit of a transition between pictures if you were ever to do something like this. So here I am. I'm going to click on my tree JPEG. I'm going to click on my circle, and I'm just going to click and drag, and we see my cursor is on a mask. And you know what I'm going to do to help myself a little bit here? I'm going to click on my guides, and I want my title action safe on, because what that's going to do, it's actually going to help me see where the crosshairs are right in the middle. Now it's a little tricky, but it is there. All right, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a mask and put a mask onto this layer, the top layer, and we'll do a little transition. So let's take a peek here. So I click on this one, the layer is selected. I click on my shape tool, my circle, and I see as I hover over, yeah, there's the mask, and I'm just going to click and drag. Now it looks, I have a mask on this layer, and the bottom layer is showing through because that's where the mask is. Great. So I have that. I'm just going to reposition it here a little bit. There we go. Like I said, I have some issues sometimes moving these masks around and playing around with them, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty great how you could play around with these. So I'm just going to do a quick little animation here. So what I'm going to do first, actually, I'm going to actually blow this up a little bit bigger. So I'm going to make this really big, and I'm going to click on that. Command T. I'm going to blow up the mask. And I'm going to try to get that right in the middle, which it seems to be in the middle there. Perfect. And that's going to be my first, for the mask, I'm going to say my mask path. So I'm going to add a keyframe there. Click on my stopwatch. And I'm going to go back and maybe just a little bit. I'm not going to go right to the beginning. Now, at this point, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to bring this right down. And I'm going to shrink it down. Should have got that anchor point in the middle. But I'm just going to keep aligning it. Bring it down. Zoom in very close. Get to that spot there. Holding down Shift, keeping it really, really small. And if I can't even get that small, what I could do, I could also play around with the opacity and make it work that way if I really, really wanted to bring it down to nothing. Like I said, I'm sure there's a better way to do this, but this is how I'm doing it right now. Manually, simple, foundational stuff, pretty easy. That's it. So let me shut off my guides here. Okay, and that's all. Let's see what happens here. So right here I have this picture. I have a little mask on there. And as I go through, it wipes, kind of like a circular wipe to the next picture. So there's another way to play around with masks. It's pretty interesting. Now another way, let me shut these off. I'm going to bring in a logo just to show you how we could utilize that as well. That's great. Bring it on. There it is. Center, center. Perfect. And same idea. Let me add a mask here. You know, I'm going to do that automatic mask layer. And let me select the actual layer. This is the only way it works. It has to be selected. Layer, mask, new mask. And it's just going to make a mask around my whole object. Now, my whole picture that I brought in was actually this size. So it just goes around the whole thing. That's great. So let me actually do, an expansion. I'm going to do that. There we are. I'm going to bring it right here. So I see my logo for a little bit. And then I'm just going to have it disappear. Actually, you know what? I'll do the opposite. I'll have it appear with the mask expansion. So I'm going to click on my stopwatch for mask expansion. And right here, it's going to be my mask expansion is going to be inward. So I'm going to bring it negative. But how negative? There, I'll start right about there. Perfect. Move it over. And then I'm going to, another stopwatch there, another frame. I'm just going to move this up the opposite way. I'm holding down Shift to make it go a little bit faster. And there I go. That's it. There's my quick animation with a mask. Just doing a quick expansion. Looks pretty nice, pretty simple. You know what? Let's, on top of that, let's do another one. Let's do a mask opacity as well. So at the opacity, which is kind of the same idea, I'm going to make it 0. Then I'll bring it up right about here. Same idea to 100 and see if that actually adds anything to it at all. It may or may not. Yeah, a little bit. Pretty cool. And that's kind of all what I want to play with about masks. So we could animate them. There's a few different ways to bring them in and actually make masks, and a lot of fun you could have with them. But once again, if you're not even looking to animate them, just to use a mask to either, once again, show or hide something, this is definitely a great tool to use in After Effects.